Hey everybody, today is October 3rd, 2020. Pretty big news story yesterday as the United States and the rest of the world learned that Donald Trump and his wife Melania were diagnosed with the COVID virus that's been dominating the news cycle this year and is threatening to change all our lives, of course, for the much worse. Not just health-wise, but in terms of government oppression, loss of freedoms, and a number of other things. Now, as I've been explaining for the entirety of this pandemic, the coronavirus is a ritual related to the two great American eclipses that cross over the United States and create an X in the middle of the nation. The first one occurred in 2017. The second one will be in 2024. And think about the year 2024 in numerology terms. 224 with the zero dropped. Of course, 2 times 24 is 48, and this eclipse is on April 8th, or 4/8. As a quick example of how the media attributes this numerology in their headlines, notice how they put the phrase, "doing very well," in quotes in this news story today. And look at the gematria of doing very well in this Jewish cipher, 2,240, representing the number 224. In that same cipher, corona sums to 224. And remember, the coronavirus, just like Black Death, is said to have come from Hubei, China, the province that Wuhan is located in, and Hubei equals 224. Of course, the corona of the sun is only visible during a total solar eclipse. And now we get a virus named after the corona for this giant eclipse ritual that we're undergoing in the United States. And for someone like me who's been teaching about eclipse numerology for well over 3 years now, it's quite stunning how few people understand what's really happening in this country, but I digress. Let's pay close attention to the numerology and get on with the story here. So Donald Trump was born on June 14th of 1946. This means that on the date that his diagnosis was made public, and what's important here is that the diagnosis, I guess, was on October 1st. News of the diagnosis broke right around midnight on October 2nd, which is a good sign that the date is very significant anytime something happens right near midnight like that. Well, on October 2nd, Donald Trump was 74 years and 110 days old. In the alphabetic order, president sums to 110. Also notice the 47 in reduction. This is the inverse of 74, his current age. We'll talk more about that in a second. In reverse reduction, president sums to 52. And the date of his diagnosis being public, 10 plus 2 plus 20 plus 20 equals 52. As far as the 52, of course, the president presides in the White House, which sums to 52. Assuming authority, 52, over the government, another 52. But for most of this video, I want to talk about how this story is aligned damn near perfectly with 4 total solar eclipse dates. 2 of those dates are the ones that I just discussed, the 2 great American eclipses, 2017 and 2024. What's also logical here is to look at the most recent total solar eclipse, July 2nd of last year, and this year's upcoming total solar eclipse, which is on December 14th. December 14th of this year is the exact midway point between these 2 great American eclipses. Now, in the New Testament, the crucifixion of Jesus Christ occurs as darkness falls over the sky according to 3 of the 4 Gospels. This is understood by most people to be a solar eclipse. However, being crucified on Passover, that would not be possible. And in fact, the date that is most commonly given for the crucifixion is April 3rd of 33 AD, which is the date of a total lunar eclipse. Similarly, Donald Trump, born on June 14th of 1946, born on the date of a total lunar eclipse. And as I put in the post, rather comically, when you type out Jesus, you get this value of 985 in Jewish Gematria. The reverse of that number is 589, which is what you get when you write out Donald Trump, who is essentially playing the role of the right-wing Jesus throughout his presidency. As far as the Gematria of Jesus in ordinal, it sums to 74. This is the same as killing, cross, Messiah, gospel, etc. And of course, Trump is 74 years old currently. Now, measuring from the date of his diagnosis being made public to the date of the next total solar eclipse is a span of 74 days. Without the end date, his diagnosis was 74 days before that eclipse. And of course, this is the 2020 total solar eclipse. And notice how total solar eclipse has Gematria of 202 in the alphabetic order and 704 in Jewish Gematria. And here we are 74 days before the 2020 total solar eclipse. Notice how in the alphabetic order, coronavirus pandemic sums to 220. Amazing how the pandemic has attacked the world in the year 2020. This is also the Gematria of Donald John Trump, the president's full name. So the eclipse we just measured to is the next one coming up in a couple months. Next, let's look at the most recent one, July 2nd of 2019. Measuring from that date to October 2nd, the date of the news, we get this fancy 1 year, 92 days. The word eclipse sums to 192 in the Jewish cipher. Of course, prime numbers are highly significant to this study of numerology. Notice how the 192nd prime number is 1163. In English Gematria, coronavirus equals 1163. Showing once again that this is a heavy eclipse ritual. Could not be more obvious. In the reduction method, eclipse sums to 33. Trump's diagnosis made public a span of 33 days before Election Day. Corona equals 33 in reverse reduction. And notice how this year's Election Day is on November 3rd, the date written 11/3. Election Day equals 113. And of course, 11 times 3 gives us that 33. Now, on the date March 11th, the other date that can be written 11/3, that's when the World Health Organization declared a coronavirus pandemic, which also sums to 113. Melania Trump was, of course, also diagnosed with the virus, allegedly. Her birthday is April 26th. Measuring from the date of the news to Melania's birthday was 206 days, which slots in perfectly as this also occurred 206 days with the end date after coronavirus was declared a pandemic. And this 206 is a very interesting number. earlier this year, in the beginning of June, I identified the 20th of June as a very significant date for Donald Trump based on this post I'm rapidly scrolling through on the left. And then after I made this post, they scheduled his first rally for June 20th. Measuring from Melania's date of birth to the date of this news, notice how she was 50 years and 159 days old. 50 and 159. Donald equals 50 in the alphabetic order. And Donald Trump equals 159 in reverse. Before I get into the rest of the eclipse numbers, I want to touch on the fact that there's a heavy riddle here involving JFK and Tupac. Sounds strange, I understand, but this makes perfect sense. A couple of weeks ago, I did a video on a police ambush in the city of Compton, California. This event was numerically related to the film Straight Outta Compton, which features footage from Tupac. The shooting was on a date with 61 Numerology. It was 61 months exactly after Straight Outta Compton was released, and Tupac is 61 in the alphabetic order. Of course, the story made news on September 13th, which is the anniversary of Tupac's death. And in the ordinal cipher, Tupac Shakur equals 139, like the date's the 13th of September. Now, what's interesting about Tupac, furthermore, is that he was born on June 16th. And June 16th is the date that Donald Trump began his presidential campaign in 2015. So from June 16th of 71, which is when Tupac was born, to June 16th of 2015, when Trump began running for president, notice how Tupac would have been 44 years old on that date, or maybe still is, for all we know. 44. John F. Kennedy was the winner of the 1960 presidential election. That was the 44th election in the history of the nation. Notice how JFK in Jewish Gematria equals 616, just like Tupac's birthday, the date that Trump ran his campaign for the first time. This being the same as ritual sacrifice 616. But back to the 44. Trump beginning his campaign on what would have been Tupac's 44th birthday. Well, notice how John F. Kennedy sums to 193 in the reverse alphabetic order. 193 is the 44th prime number. His presidency ended when he was assassinated, which equals 193. And in a post that I linked in my blog post that's linked below the video, you can find a post I did on JFK being assassinated and how it happened at the age of exactly 193 mercurial years old. Remember, Kennedy was born in 1917, which is the Gematria of Mercury. He was a Gemini, which is ruled by the planet Mercury. Now, measuring from the date that Trump first took office, which was January 20th of 2017, to the date of his coronavirus diagnosis, was exactly 193 weeks. If you include the end date, notice how this is also 1 year and 93 days after the most recent total solar eclipse. Now, if we instead measure to these two great American eclipses, notice how it's a span of 3 years and 190 days before the second great American eclipse, another number with the 193 digits. The day before Trump's diagnosis was even 3 years, 1 month, and 9 days after the first Great American Eclipse. Again, yet another number with the 139 sequence. Remember Tupac Shakur dying on the 13th of September, or 13/9. Just like Tupac Shakur in Ordinal. I also found it interesting that they're putting Trump up at Walter Reed, because in Sumerian Gematria, Walter Reed equals 666. And in the video that I also linked in this post, something that I did back in April, essentially explaining how coronavirus is the ultimate 666 ritual. All the way through Bill Gates, his old partner Paul Allen, the death of Kobe Bryant, who was buried in Corona del Mar, California. What's also pretty alarming, and I wish I found this sooner. Someone pointed this out to me recently, and it brings everything together. It blew my mind. But remember the Black Death Plague. This is the plague that occurred shortly after the 1331 total solar eclipse, the one that never touched a major body of water. Well, the Black Death Plague ended in 1353. Now, if you take the year 2019 and subtract 1353, you get 666. Remember, Corona equals 66. It's 6 letters long. Not going to get into all the 666 stuff right now. I invite you to check out the video that's linked in this post. I might even link it below in the description. In fact, I think I'll do that right now before I forget. Corona and 666 down in the description below. You'll probably have to refresh. But that's the end of the post. Again, everything about coronavirus is related to these 2 eclipses, and this eclipse boy, Donald Trump, born on the date of a lunar eclipse, who will probably be president through 2024 during the second eclipse. I've been saying that ever since he was elected. And what's interesting, you have 2 eclipses, right? Maybe this is a coincidence, but when you write out eclipse, it sums to 138, which is Donald Trump, 138. And if you measure from the first eclipse to the date of the news story, it was 1,138 days later. So a lot of interesting things to unpack here. I'm sure there's a lot more, but just trying to stay consistent in my work and explaining once again how this eclipse code, which I've been teaching for 3 years, is heavily, heavily in play. Peace, love, God bless. Thanks to everybody for jumping in, whether you're watching live or archived. Everyone is free to share the content as they feel necessary to help wake people up to the reality, or something closer to the reality, about this world. See ya!